Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, last night, live on this show, we heard the Trump press conference. We heard the announcement that America was going to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. We heard some of the president's reasons for wanting to do so. And it was interesting because by the end of the hour, we were getting responses from the European Union, responses from Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, global responses coming in from Saudi Arabia and others, and some people in agreement with what Trump had done, others not so. What was very odd was how little appeared to be emanating last night from anybody in any sort of authority in this country. But today we have had the official response, and Boris Johnson earlier on today was speaking in the House of Commons.
Britain has no intention of walking away. Instead, we will cooperate with the other parties to ensure that while Iran continues to restrict its nuclear program, then its people will benefit from sanctions relief in accordance with the central bargain of the deal. Britain worked alongside France and Germany to find a way forward that would have addressed the President's concerns, but I still believe that would have been the better course. Now that our efforts on this side of the Atlantic have not succeeded, it falls to the US administration to spell out their view of the way ahead.
We will work with other parties, says Boris. What he's really saying to you is, we don't actually have our own foreign policy anymore. Foreign policy in this country is now decided at a European Union level. And despite the fact we're heading for Brexit, I wonder whether any of this is actually going to change. We saw this during William Hague's tenure as Foreign Secretary. Hague being very clear that on many big global issues, the United Kingdom would not speak with an independent voice. We would speak with a joint European voice. And I wonder sometimes just how much influence we really have over European Union foreign policy, and I suspect perhaps not that much. But equally, how much influence do we have in America? Because Boris has just hot-footed back, of course, from Washington. He was there. He followed the visit of Macron, the visit of Merkel. He was trying to change the view of the Americans. And isn't it interesting that President Trump didn't even meet him? So I think our influence, Boris's trip over there, frankly, was a bit of a waste of time. Let's listen also to Emily Thornberry speaking for the Labour Party on Nick Farage's show first thing this morning.
I think that it's reckless. I think that it's idiotic. I think that he's just tearing up a deal that the rest of the world has agreed to. It took many years to negotiate. I'm not here to defend Iran. I'm here basically in order to say that the way forward when it comes to peace is for there to be talks and for there to be agreements. And there was an agreement, and President Trump has decided that he's just going to rip it up. I think that Mattis, the Defence Secretary, the United States Defence Secretary, has agreed with this as well. It's not just me. You know, the most important independent reviewers of what has happened also say that the Americans have not breached this, the Iranians have not breached this agreement. Now, the Israelis, you may be referring to what the Israelis came up with.
Yes.
The Israelis came up with this evidence which showed up to 2003 the Iranians did have a nuclear strategy. They were building nuclear bombs, and it's for that very reason that we needed to have an agreement. Yes. I'm afraid the Israeli evidence didn't show anything further than that.
Emily Thornberry, the idea that this agreement that was concluded in 2015 has somehow made Iran a better country is completely contradicted by all of the facts. Not just a state sponsor of terrorism, but increasingly Iran trying to exert its influence across the whole of the Middle East. Funny, isn't it? It was a Labour Party government that convinced us we had to go to war in Iraq because we wanted regime change against Saddam Hussein, somebody who, of course, was a secular dictator, and yet we appear to want to prop up an Islamic extremist regime that has been in place for nearly 40 years and whose primary aim is to make the rest of the Middle East, if not the world, subscribe to that doctrine. I think we've had this wrong for a very, very long time. And I have to say, not just their behaviour in the last 3 years, but how can we believe them or trust them anyway? Because originally, they actually denied they were trying to build nuclear weapons capability. Why should we believe them? I have to say, for my money, I think Trump and the Americans are right on this. And Iran themselves today have said that they think that the British will now come into line with what Trump has done. I think the Iranians are out of touch with modern Britain in this sense. We may historically have very often done similar things to the Americans on foreign policy, but right now we don't make foreign policy decisions. We do it at a European Union level. We have limited influence there. We clearly have very little influence at the moment with this American administration. And I think that Britain has lost its voice when it comes to foreign policy. And if you agree with me that we really have lost our leverage in the world, it's about time we did start to shape our own independent foreign policy, separate to what Donald Tusk or Mr. Juncker or Merkel or Macron think. And by the way, an independent foreign policy doesn't mean we always support what America does, but very often I think we might. If you think that's the case, please call me on 0345 6060 973. You can text to 84850, and you can, of course, tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. You can watch us on Facebook. You can comment there too. Let's go to Adam, who's a first-time caller to this show, and he lives in Glasgow. Good evening, Adam.
Hello, Nigel. How are you doing?
Sorry, Andrew, I apologise. I'm doing well.
Andrew.
So, Andrew, my contention is that Britain, as an independent country with its own foreign policy, has almost ceased to exist on the world stage.
I mean, I do feel that influence has been diminished. I should preface all this by saying, Nigel, I tend to agree with you on almost everything, to be honest. And I also agree with President Donald Trump on most things as well. Uh-huh. So, with that said, I have to disagree with you on Iran as a whole. And I disagree with Mr. Trump's angle and the current direction he's carving through. If Mr. Trump could be said to have any real glaring weaknesses at all, I think most people would probably agree that they're going to be somewhere in the region of international policy within the confines of historical materialism rather than domestic fiscal or anything like that. I don't think it would be unfair to say. And I think when it comes to Iran in particular, Mr. Trump needs a history lesson in many ways. I mean, I think he's forgetting what happened. If you set the clocks back 15 years to when we first invaded Iran, you're seeing a repeat of history essentially playing out before us.
Well, he's not going to invade Iran, Andrew. He's not going to invade Iran. He has said he's quite prepared to talk to the Iranians if they will come back with a better, more constructive deal. But the truth, Andrew, I think, the real truth is this. This extreme Islamist regime, which, by the way, breaches all human rights, spreads its poison as much as it can around the whole of the Middle East. The real hope that Trump has got is that the people rise up and get rid of this regime. And I can see how regime change in Iraq and certainly in Libya made places worse, not better. Difficult to see in Iran how regime change could not make things a lot better.
But we already tried it in 2003.
Well, we haven't succeeded in doing it, though, have we?
No, but I mean, if you think now, the situation in terms of, the global nuclear situation just now, Saddam Hussein did not respond very well to the invasion in 2003. I mean, how is he going to respond now that he has a nuclear arsenal?
Well, they haven't yet got a nuclear arsenal. At least we don't think they've yet got a nuclear arsenal. I mean, Andrew, are you suggesting, do you believe, as Emily Thornberry does and Boris appears to, do you believe that under the terms of this deal, the Iranians were not developing in any way their nuclear capability?
I believe Saddam has every intention of developing his nuclear arsenal to its fullest capacity.
Well, not Saddam in this case, but Rouhani. Yeah. What do you mean? No, I'm saying Rouhani's the guy that runs Iran. Do you think he actually was intending not to become a nuclear power? Or was he using the fact that sanctions had been weakened as a means of spreading his influence throughout the Middle East?
Rouhani,
the Iranian president.
Okay.
Yeah, should we have left the deal in place, Andrew, yes or no?
I mean, I'm not going to lie, I thought Saddam Hussein was still in power.
No, afraid not. Never mind, we will have to move on, I'm afraid. Hi, Nigel. We're coming out of the European Union. We should go it alone now, as we always did in the past, and speak for ourselves. Good luck to President Trump. At least he's got some courage. Well, he's got plenty of that. Why are you lying about our foreign policy being stuck in the EU? We followed the US into wars and bombings without the EU. Yes, Gary, we did. And that all changed under William Hague, and we decided that in future we would do most of our foreign policy as part of a European Union collective. That's the direction we've been going in for the best part of the last decade. On some issues I agree with Trump, but on this I do not. Why has Trump created a problem where none existed or needed to be created? Chris, there is a problem. The problem is that Iran is using its influence right across that region. This is an extremist Islamic regime that wants to convert the whole of the region to that credo. And I do not think that weakening sanctions, that frankly appeasing this regime, I don't believe it's achieved anything over the course of the last 3 years. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is now 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
Donald Trump has pulled the US out of that landmark 2015 nuclear deal with Iran last night. Shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry.
I think that it's reckless. I think that it's idiotic. I think that he's just tearing up a deal that the rest of the world has agreed to. It took many years to negotiate.
There is that continual drumbeat of hostility, isn't there? We do have Iranian warships harassing the US.
None of these things are good, but what you don't do is you don't agreement on one thing and then say, well, I don't agree with what you're doing in terms of other things, so therefore I'm going to rip up the first agreement.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With The Times. Be not just informed, but well informed.
I put her tea out while she rabbits on about Hannah's birthday party. I make sure the chips aren't touching the fish fingers, and she gets something from the jar for eating all her peas. She needn't know what a struggle it was getting up at 2 p.m, how hard it is to avoid the ulcers when I brush my teeth, or how it feels taking 13 tablets a day. Because I might have cancer, but the most important thing is that I'm Sophie's mum.
A mum with cancer is still a mum. Our support line is here to help you get through the hard days. Because life with cancer is still life, and we're here to help you live it. We are Macmillan Cancer Support.
Here are some things you can afford to miss at work. Keyboard warriors. Meaningless jargon.
Let's just circle back and align.
That thing that's going round. Ugh. But you can't afford to miss calls to your small business, because missed calls cost you money. eReceptionist manages and diverts your calls. Plus, you can dial out from your eReceptionist number on your mobile. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at ereceptionist.co.uk. T's and C's apply. See website for details.
PPI. One question. Why have you still not checked if you're due a refund? Even if you don't know if you've had PPI, surely it's worth finding out. All Fast Track Reclaim Needs is the name of your bank. We'll check for PPI on every credit card, loan and mortgage you've ever had. For a 100% free, no obligation PPI check, text YES to 82727. That's YES to 82727.
Fast Track Reclaim. Text YES to 82727.
An amazing kitchen, an amazing bathroom, an amazing hallway. At Amazing Tiles, our range of porcelain, ceramic and bespoke tiles can make any home amazing. Right now, buy 5 metres or more of plain tiles and get a third off the retail price. Visit our showroom and warehouse at Park Royal Road, London, or call 0208 83 84 900. Make your home amazing at amazingtiles.com.
Ah, the humble bee. Off to work they go. Amazing what you can achieve when you work together towards a shared goal. That's why we asked you, the customer, what you wanted most when we developed our new transit range. Your response inspired thousands of ideas, creating a new range purpose-built for every kind of business. Take the new Tornado Custom, our most professional and luxurious model yet. You can get flexible rear conference seats offering 30 different seating arrangements. Thanks for that. We couldn't have done it without you. See how we can all work together with the new Transit range at Ford.co.uk. Ford. Together we go further.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
The Iranian regime, like chants of death to America, they sponsor terrorism. Oh, and by the way, in the last 3 years, they've been busy developing their ballistic missile capability. A little bit like, perhaps in some ways, the North Koreans. Is it any wonder that Trump wanted to end this deal? I don't think so. And as a consequence of this and other factors, you may or may not have noticed that the oil price today is up over $77 a barrel. It's hit a 3.5-year high. You'll be paying more to fill your cars up very, very soon. I'm going to go to Sina, who's calling from Woking. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Hi. Yeah. So, well, my first point is that I really believe that the British politicians should beware about taking the side of a country, of a regime who has just burned the flag of their biggest ally in their parliament earlier today.
Absolutely, yes. Sina, for those that haven't seen it, in Tehran, an American flag was burnt in Parliament today. You're absolutely right.
Yes, and also, since the 2015 and the signing of the JCPOA, all they did was just to spend all the petrodollars on spreading the Shia extremism into the region and just destabilizing the whole region. So, and also in regards to human rights, I mean, I really believe that if Britain wants to show that they do value, human rights, they need to stand with the Iranian people. I mean, bear this in mind that the regime is already on the brink of a collapse. So,
well, it may be. It may be. That remains to be seen. We have seen waves of protest. Yeah. So your point, Sina, and I have to say I'm with you on this, is far from this deal taming Iran. It's actually taken advantage of it to be even more aggressive in its tactics in the region.
Absolutely right. Yes, and now they are. I mean, what we're saying is that they are still, supporting the regime inside Iran, and this is something that absolutely disappointing for the freedom fighters inside Iran. Kind of very, very turbulent times.
Is it? I mean, in your view, should Boris Johnson? I mean, the European Union are not going to change their policy. Is it time Boris Johnson had a serious thought about the United Kingdom independently, pulling ourselves away from that European policy, and perhaps siding with America?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that would be, the most promising news that we, as Iranians, could hear. Yeah.
Tell me, and do you have Iranian relatives still living there?
Well, yeah, of course, yeah.
You do?
Yeah,
you
most
do?
of my families, they're living there. And yes, obviously, yes, we're all sad because, the value of our assets, that have been halved in the past 6 months. And, it will definitely keep going down as well. But since last night, we are all, as I'm talking about me and my family, we are all happy that we have, put one step closer to, the collapse of the regime. And that's a good news for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Sina, thank you very much indeed. Excellent. 40 years of EU rule means we don't know how to stand up on our own 2 feet. This is why our government is so weak on carrying out the referendum. Making crucial decisions is not what these politicians are used to, says John from Market Drayton. Well, John, in general terms, I agree with you. Foreign policy, is actually a more recent thing with the European Union, but you're quite right. We do have a British government and our civil service who are happy for big decisions to get taken at a higher level, and as a result of that mentality, I feel that we are pretty much non-existent on the world stage in terms of foreign policy and influence. And interestingly, with the big cutbacks in the military since 2010. We haven't got much muscle there either. I think it's all a bit sad and something needs to change. Adam is calling from Madrid in Spain. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening again, Nigel. Nice to speak to you.
Good to speak to you.
I lived in the Middle East for 14 years. And when I was there, I dealt with a lot of Iranians. And I'd like to say they are sophisticated, intelligent, worldly, outward-looking people who generally hate their government, which they themselves describe as a thuggish regime. Okay?
Yep.
They are cynical. The government is cynical. And you mentioned Emily Thornberry before. I listened to her this morning, and I was hoping she might mention the British-Iranian woman who's been sentenced to 5 years in prison for allegedly trying to topple the state.
Yep.
Now, Iran likes to do that. There are several British-Iranian nationals or, British nationals of Iranian origin in prison there.
So it's an awful. Well, this is what I don't understand, Adam. They're always screaming. I mean, they scream at Donald Trump. They say he's bad on human rights, and yet they want to support this regime effectively.
Yeah, but get this. This morning, I read in the press that North Korea is going to release 3 Korean-American nationals as part of, as an act of goodwill.
I'm going to be talking.
Their discussions with Donald Trump.
Adam, I'm going to be talking about that in a. I'm going to cover that in a few minutes' time. I really am. So, what does Boris need to do as Foreign Secretary to re-establish this country as a country of influence with a voice in the world?
He needs to remember that that's what we were and that's what we could be. He needs to grow a pair.
Okay, very good. Put succinctly, Adam from Madrid in Spain. Thank you. Robin is calling from Whitehaven in Cumbria. Good evening.
Hello, Nigel. I'll just pick up on the last point there. What Boris needs to do if he wants the United Kingdom to be an influence around the world again, the best thing he could do is resign, basically. That's the most effective thing, is resign.
And do you have a suggestion, Robin, for somebody that would replace him?
Well, I would replace the full Tory government, to be honest, Nigel, because there are shambles and it's getting projected around the world what's happening right now. They couldn't run a bath, never mind the country. They're it's a cabinet of chaos, catalogue of failures, whatever you want to call it, that's what's happening. The United Kingdom is no longer now a superpower in any way, shape or form. Militarily, we've shrunk. The Army, the Navy, the Air Force is gone, basically. Right. So we asked our brave men and women to go and fight in these wars to protect America's interests and other big multinational corporations' interests, which is they won't even fund them properly. They won't even give them the equipment that's needed. So that's my rant about that. Economically, we're a shrinking market. You know what I mean? We have what's our gross domestic product now? We've got the banking service. Once we leave the EU, is that going to up sticks and not up over to France and Germany?
I wouldn't have thought so, Robin, for a moment. No.
We don't have any power left in the United Kingdom, and it's absolutely idiotic to think that we should have any influence on anything world events, because, come on now, to be honest, Boris Johnson turning up, really?
So, Robin, I mean, you see us as a nation in decline.
No, I don't. I see us as a nation being dragged down by a Tory government who can't even agree on agreeing.
Well, I'm not convinced, Robin, that if Emily Thornberry was Foreign Secretary at the moment, we'd be hearing anything much different.
Well, I think what we'd do there is we'd go to Parliament and we'd discuss things and we'd debate things, and then we'd decide what's best for the country, not just best for a certain element of it. You know what I mean? Here's a question, and it's a sad thing, and it's a touchy subject. How many British men and women have lost their lives by following America into an American conflict?
Yes, that's very true, Robin, but if America hadn't followed us into a couple of conflicts, I doubt we'd be having this conversation. I doubt LBC would be allowed to even be on air. And whilst I don't think America gets absolutely everything right, I'll tell you what, Robin, I think they're right about Iran. Do you?
Well, I think they're right about Iran. They should have stayed. Donald Trump should have stayed in the deal, because what he's doing, I think personally, is foreign policy is by Twitter, is showboating, and he seems to, on the face of it, got away with North Korea.
Got away with it? Got away with it? He's achieving... Robin, he's achieving extraordinary things.
But the problem here that we have, Nigel, and the Iranian regime is a different thing. It's a completely different kettle of fish as opposed to the Korean regime. The Middle East is a tinderbox waiting to go off. You know what I mean? This is a serious issue.
Well, it is. It is no one's doubting that. Robin, you and I disagree on this. I think for my money, why on earth would you show weakness to a regime who, since this deal was struck, have behaved as badly as they have, and they have behaved absolutely dreadfully? Robin, I thank you for your call. We get a warning here from Chris. If Trump does anything militarily in Iran, it will end up in another Syria, but 10 times worse. I don't think he has any intention of doing anything in a military sense in Iran, unless Iran was to directly attack Israel. Then the situation would be different. British foreign policy should be British and not via a bunch of hysterical continentals. The other side of the English Channel, says Richard. And of course Donald Tusk, who's in charge of, the president of the European Council, said last night, this is a moment for European solidarity. Well, solidarity is one thing, but what about re-examining the policy? What about actually revisiting this deal? What about analysing and recognising that, in fact, far from taming Iran, it's actually in many ways made them even worse? You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive on LBC. It's now 7:30 and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
Donald Trump's warned Iran of very severe consequences if it restarts its nuclear program. The president's defended his decision to withdraw the US from the international deal designed to limit Tehran's nuclear ambitions. 2 fairground workers have been told they face jail after a 7-year-old girl died when the bouncy castle she was playing on blew away. The inflatable rolled 300 metres down a hill in Essex in 2016. The government has narrowly avoided having to implement the second part of the Leveson inquiry into press conduct. The second stage of the inquiry, which had been cancelled by the government, would have looked into relations between the media and police. LBC weather, heavy rain moving eastwards across the UK, leaving clear conditions in the west, very windy in the northwest, a low of 5 degrees.
LBC Travel, Romney Road in Greenwich is closed in both directions near the university because of an accident, and there are queues on the A3 southbound between Shannon Corner and the Hook Junction because of an accident as well. The North Circular Road has delays in both directions between Park Royal and Staples Corner. That's ahead of the match at Wembley tonight, and Fulham Road is closed in both directions either side of Stamford Bridge Stadium. That's ahead of tonight's Chelsea match. On the tubes, the Central Line has no service between Hainault and Woodford via Grange Hill. LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler.
This is LBC.
There are many ways to see Tenerife. Its historic towns, architecture, volcanoes, or just mile on mile of beautiful beaches. But there's only one way to fly.
Fly British Airways from Gatwick to Tenerife from £299 per person for return flights and 7 nights accommodation. Availability and dates are extremely limited. At all protected. Conditions and booking fee may apply. For full details, cba.com/Gatwick.
So, tell us your name and what you do.
My name's Clive and I'm a hermit crab. Clive's the name, moving home is the game.
And as a hermit crab, do you like finding new places to live?
Oh yeah, before Zoopla, it used to do my shelling.
And it's better now?
Oh, with Zoopla, finding a new place is easy. And they help manage your move too. From comparing mortgages to checking removals. They even help find broadband and telly packages. I never miss an episode of Celebrity Crab Island.
Well, that's certainly something to be proud of.
Find and move with Zoopla. Smarter about property. Namaste. Welcome to Mala, London's unique Indian dining experience. Located at the historic St Catherine's Docks, the hidden jewel of London. Marvel at the authentic antiques, murals and paintings from India's rich history. Then enjoy the finest Indian cuisine, traditionally prepared with recipes that have been handed down through the centuries. For a truly authentic taste of India, visit malarestaurant.com.
Often, the post is just takeaway leaflets and bills.
and people trying to sell you stuff you don't need. But now and again, the post contains something life-changing, like the envelope you've been sent for Christian Aid Week. Because by using it to donate just a £5, you could help change the lives of people around the world. People like Marceline, whose home was destroyed by a hurricane. So please keep an eye on your doormat this Christian Aid Week, because together we're stronger than the storms.
It's in my hair, my eyebrows, it's even up my nose! They make painting look easy on the telly, but let me tell you, it's not. The wall looks like it's been finger painted by a giant child. Who's going to rescue this? Oh, relax. It's Trust a Trader. Actual professionals who know what they're doing and don't leave the place looking like, well, my face. Now I can concentrate on the important stuff. Whispering peach or dirty mayonnaise. Visit trustatrader.com.
TrustATrader.com.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
When Trump gave that press conference last night and announced America was pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, and by the way, quite why anyone's surprised by this is beyond me. He promises things in his election campaign, and then he does them, and people say, isn't it dreadful? It was no surprise to me. And I wonder, did Boris really think, when he went out to Washington, he was going to change the administration's mind? I don't know, but it was never, ever going to happen. But when you saw Trump speaking, there was a side shot, and you could see, standing in the doorway, Vice President Pence, National Security Advisor John Bolton, and other senior members of the administration. But one person was missing, and we found out why during the course of Trump's talk. He said Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was actually on his way to North Korea to have meetings with Kim's team to get ready for the historic summit that's due within the next few weeks. And there's been some really, I think, rather dramatically good news that has come out of North Korea today. Let's hear Donald Trump talking about this a few moments ago.
It will be, I think, a very special time, because nobody thought this was going to happen. And if it did, it would be years or decades, frankly. Nobody thought this was going to happen. And I appreciate Kim Jong-un doing this and allowing them to go. We've picked a time, we've picked a place for the meeting, or summit, as you like to call it. And I think it'll be very successful. But as I always say, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But it's going to be a very important event. Again, I think this is something that nobody thought was going to happen for years or more.
So, Mike Pompeo is now on an aeroplane on his way back to the United States of America. And on that aeroplane with him, there are 3 American citizens, Kim Hak-sung, Tony Kim, and Kim Dong-chu. And those 3 American citizens were, until this morning, detained in a North Korean prison. They are now free. They walked onto the plane unassisted. They'll be landing back in the USA at 2 a.m. East Coast time. That is 7 a.m. UK time. All of this you'll be able to hear live on Nick Ferrari's show tomorrow morning. And guess who's going to be on the tarmac to meet them? Yep, it'll be one Donald J. Trump. And when you think back through the history, of Jimmy Carter trying to get hostages out of Iran years ago, this represents a real big win for the Trump administration. And I would say this to people, if Trump has been right about North Korea all the way through, could it just be that he's right about Iran as well? I think he is. I think the European Union's foreign policy, the European Union and Obama's foreign policy towards Iran in terms of this deal has simply been wrong. It is time to have a rethink. Brussels won't do that, but we could. Now that we've voted for Brexit, we're heading in a different place. We could and we should now do that here in this country. Let's go back to the callers. Let's go to Adil, who is calling from Sheffield and a first-time caller to this show. You're very welcome.
Hello, Nigel. You all right?
I'm well, thank you. So, has Trump done the right thing?
Well, in terms of the actual nuclear deal, Donald Trump, I believe, the nuclear deal, because the UN nuclear watchdog has reported that Iran is staying within the main limits set in 2015 of the multilateral agreement. But Donald Trump is still saying the deal was void. I don't agree with Donald Trump on that point. However, I think that there should be sanctions on Iran, mainly because of their behavior in exporting and destabilizing their counter neighbors, Iraq, and trying to export terrorism to countries like Lebanon, and having a very destabilizing the foreign policy that they have. So I think there should be definitely sanction on Iran, but I don't agree with Donald Trump on the nuclear deal.
Yes, I mean, you're quite right. You know, the UN weapons inspectors say that they have been compliant, you know, with reducing, stopping, even cutting back on their uranium stock. Of course, Netanyahu tells a completely different story, and it's also worth remembering that as part of this deal, for some extraordinary reason, ballistic missiles were not part of it, and we're told they've been building those up in a very big way.
Iran is a threat to many of our Gulf partners, and they're constantly threatening other countries and exporting their terrorism, mainly in Iraq, which has destabilized the region even further in sectarian war between the Sunnis and the Shias. For that reason, Iran is a threat to the whole Middle East, and they're not complying at all with any other countries in the Middle East or willing to sort of negotiate. It's just a matter for them to get their vicious policy or their foreign policy ahead in front of everyone.
Should Boris rethink the UK position and not continue to go along with the European Union's view?
Well, the UK should have its independent policy now that we're exiting the European Union. We should start to form our own independent policy, regardless of our previous influence that America has had on us. The UK should now start thinking in its own feet and to think, how can we best get our influence across the world and get our power back.
I would like to see us do that. Thank you, Adil, very much indeed. I agree with Nigel Farage on most things, but you're wrong on this. You're wrong on Iran. Please get out of Donald Trump's pocket. Well, I tell you what, there are 3 former prisoners coming back on an aeroplane who would be very pleased on that tarmac to jump straight into Donald Trump's pocket. And I do find, on this issue of Trump, that a lot of people who don't like him, don't like his style, find it very difficult to acknowledge when he's had successes. He has had already some big wins with North Korea. Let's hope there are bigger wins to come. There may not be, but let's hope there are bigger wins to come. And I'm asking people to think, if he got that right, maybe, just maybe, folks, he's right about Iran too. Nigel, of course, Boris should side with Donald Trump and the USA. The EU has as much clout as a wet sponge. I called a damp rag was a phrase I once used. Donald is right, full stop, says John from Burnham-on-Sea in Somerset. Let's go to Neil in Stanmore. Good evening, Neil.
Hi, Nigel.
Hi, how you doing?
2 or 3 things. Yeah, really good today. I think firstly, we have to remember that the Iranians, of course, were found out to have had extra facilities before or just after the sanctions came into effect, or the deal was put into effect. So, but they've got form for...
They've lied for... Neil, they've lied for years about this.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Secondly, apples don't fall far from their tree, and it's interesting, Emily Thornberry, making her suggestions. Well, she was in Palestine, with the Palestinian Authority last week, applauding Mahmoud Abbas making the most unbelievably anti-Semitic speech.
Okay, well, let's not... Yeah, this is not about Emily Thornberry.
But that's okay, no. But thirdly, more importantly, is regarding the British Foreign Office.
Yeah.
And I heard Alistair Burt this morning, and I'm just appalled at how we try and put things in a box surrounding the nuclear deal and their ballistic missile programme. What are Britain playing at? Why are we licking butts? Knowing what they do, we're not going to be able to control them. And yet, the Foreign Office think that it's a wonderful thing to do because we might be able to buy oil, or we might be able to rebuild Iran, or whatever it might be. There's some other game plan that...
Well, Neil, as I say, I read this differently. I saw this during William Hague's time, and the Foreign Office, which is just about the most Europhile institution on earth, they want us to decide foreign policy on an EU level.
I think there's other things going on. There's Britain are fighting their own corner, but it's wrong. They are being two-faced about it, and they are not playing a proper moral card because they are dealing with terrorists that they should not be dealing with. And why is that? There's no... I can't see any reason. I was speaking to our local MP, who was a very nice guy called Bob Blackman, and he said to me, I don't understand what they're playing at.
No, and we scream. We get people screaming at Trump. He's extreme. He doesn't respect human rights. But we want to continue having a deal with Iran where they treat their own people abominably. They try and spread their murderous cult across the rest of the region. They got a history of lying about nuclear ability in the past. I don't understand it, Neil. I thank you. And on Facebook, Tina says, the Tories are merely EU puppets. No ideas of their own. An utter disgrace. P45s, please. Chris says, European Union soundbites without any substance. Donald Tusk wants more solidarity. Sounds to me like more Europe. We need to start practicing our independence. I think we've got to be taught it first, actually, Chris. And Andrew says, with this and consecutive pathetic governments, we're losing credibility in the world. And you know what? That surely is one thing, folks, we can all agree on. Britain's status in the world is diminished. It's diminished in Brussels, not just because we're leaving. It wasn't very strong anyway. And for the British Foreign Secretary to go across to America on what he thought was an urgent mission to change the administration's mind and not even to be met by the president shows you we've lost influence there too. Things are not right. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Jeremy Corbyn told Theresa May today that Brexit negotiations are a shambles. Is he right that after 23 months, the government still appears to have no plan?
Clive Bull on LBC.
LBC with the Open University have been looking into adult learning and how everyone can learn while still earning, gain new qualifications, and can help bring life and social change.
I'm convinced that a lot of people can do things, but they just don't realise they can do it. But once you start doing it and you start to succeed, it just snowballs, and that then permeates into every part of your life.
To find out more about the Open University, go to lbc.co.uk.
My house, my office, they're a mess. You need London Storage Vaults. Their self-storage units are in an underground vault near Oxford Circus, so they're completely safe. They're also climate controlled, so they're ideal for anything from paperwork to fine wines. Sounds great. They'll collect your stuff for free if you're in zones 1 and 2. There's 24/7 access and all from just £10 a week.
London Storage Vaults, the future of self-storage. Visit londonstoragevaults.com. Terms and conditions apply.
When you work for yourself, you learn a few things very quickly. Claim VAT back on as much as you can. Cash flow can go from a flood to a trickle if you don't keep an eye on it. And shoeboxes are not the best filing system. If you snap a picture of your receipts and sort them with QuickBooks, you'll know what's going out and coming in with just a few taps. Track all your expenses and keep your cash flowing with QuickBooks. Backing you. Available now for up to 50% off your first 6 months. For terms and conditions, visit quickbooks.co.uk.
Want to progress more in your career or run your own business?
With a business degree at GSM London, you can follow your bold dreams to success.
Degrees are awarded by the University of Plymouth, and at GSM London, you can start a degree without formal qualifications on our foundation year.
So why wait till October? Start a degree this June.
Search Have Bold Dreams at GSM London now.
GSM London. Have bold dreams.
PPI, one question. Why have you still not checked if you're due a refund? Even if you don't know if you've had PPI, surely it's worth finding out. All Fast Track Reclaim needs is the name of your bank. We'll check for PPI on every credit card, loan and mortgage you've ever had for a 100% free, no obligation PPI check. Text YES to 82727. That's YES to 82727.
Fast Track Reclaim. Text YES to 82727.
Landlords, Direct Line guarantees to beat other insurers' renewal premiums for the same cover. Can your insurance do that? Switch to Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
I have been worried for a long time about the development of a European Union foreign policy, its expansionism to the east, and all that goes with that. Jennifer says to me, thank you, Nigel, for explaining to us about our non-existent foreign policy. What a wimpy thing to do. You've opened a new window. What happened with Iraq and Afghanistan? Well, very interesting, Jennifer. When we got involved with the Iraq war, our European partners were horrified. In fact, it was the issue that stopped Tony Blair from becoming the permanent president of the European Council. And it is since that moment that we've changed the way we do foreign policy, that the EU's become stronger in foreign policy terms, and we have been a part of it. So bad did we feel that rift was, we didn't want for it to happen again. Trump not meeting Boris in person says it all. Boris has lost respect within world politics. All Boris has left is the EU of Merkel, Macron and May. Boris has let himself down for the final time, says Caroline in Hearts. And Mitch in North London says to me, he's with me on Brexit, but we're in the same geographical part of the world as our EU neighbours. We share the same values and largely want the same thing. So why should our foreign policy not mostly align with theirs? Well, Mitch, I just don't think it ever has. Historically, or frankly, it ever will. I think it's a mistake. I genuinely do. Let's go to Sandra in Bedford. Sandra, good evening.
Yes, hello, Nigel. I just wanted to ask you what you think should happen with Iran now.
Oh, Sandra, I think that we should. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Regime change in Iraq was something I was against. Similarly in Libya, doesn't mean I was a supporter of Saddam or a supporter of Gaddafi, but I could see they were secular rulers. And I worried that if they were removed, things might get worse. And in the case of Libya, undoubtedly, it has. So I think this. I think regime change is the only hope that Iran has got. Now, I'm not suggesting, Sandra, that we intervene militarily, but we try to make life financially as tough as we possibly can for that Iranian regime, and we hope, and if we can in any way, encourage the people to rise up against this brutal regime.
No, I think that's a very, very disappointing response.
And what were you expecting me to say?
Well, I can't understand. Can't you see what's happened in the past? I mean, I'm no fan of Boris Johnson, but I'm sort of like thinking I can't understand. We're becoming nothing more than a vassal state for America, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. Israel fired missiles into Syria last night. Is that
yes.
okay? They're okay to have nuclear weapons, and America are, but not Iran. I can't understand why
well, if we become a vassal state, Sandra, we become a vassal state of the European project, and that's the ongoing debate about Brexit and the extent to which we are actually going to break free of this thing. Look, not every single piece of American foreign or military policy should we involve ourselves in, but we should, Sandra, have an independent foreign policy and make our own decisions on this. And too often in the last few years, we've simply not been doing that.
Well, we're not strong enough, Nigel. We never.
We're too little.
Strong enough.
Pathetic little island. I've heard it all, Sandra, many times from people. Frankly, I don't believe it. I think we have more than any other country. We've got the ability to punch above our weight.
But we haven't, obviously, because you've just said Boris Johnson isn't strong enough. Theresa May isn't strong enough.
I'm saying, Sandra, that we have surrendered too much of that independent foreign policy making to the European Union. It's time we got it back and started standing up on our own 2 feet.
But you've just said, so if we don't go with you, so who's going to give us that then? If we can't do it ourselves, Who will control? Who is controlling the world? Who is in charge?
Well, the biggest beast in the jungle is clearly America, isn't it?
Yeah, but do you honestly, do you not find them, this is bullying, isn't it? What's going on, don't you think?
No, not at all. It's called democracy, Sandra, actually. And Trump was elected saying, I will not help prop up financially a regime that treats its own people abominably, that tries to spread its evil doctrine around the world, that lies consistently to everybody about what its nuclear ambitions are, and I will not go on with it. And the American people voted for it, and that's what he's delivered.
The American people voted for what?
They voted for Donald Trump, and he made a series of promises, and he's just about kept all of them.
Okay, I wish you luck with that, because we will get involved. I'm kind of like thinking what China want to think about all this, because I don't trust America, and I honestly do think this will backfire. A lot of people in America who pretend to be right behind Donald Trump would like to see him fail.
Actually, Sandra, the opposite's the case. A lot of people in America who support Donald Trump dare not say so in public for fear of being slagged off.
Yeah, but we're not talking about the people. It's not up to the people. It's about the people in the Senate or whatever, or in Congress. We're not talking about the people of America, same as we're not talking about the people here, because we don't have a say in anything.
Do you, Sandra, think that the Iranian deal that Obama and Britain, France and Germany put together, do you think it was a good deal and made Iran a better country?
Let me be honest with you. I don't understand the deal, but all I can see now is that we'll be better off being with France and Germany than siding with America. You're only saying that because of Brexit, you know, and because Donald Trump's wonderful.
Well, I wanted Brexit, Sandra, because I didn't want our foreign policy or our economic policy or anything else to be set in Brussels.
Yeah, I would love to believe in Brexit, but it's not possible. Because we will become a vassal of someone else.
No, we can be independent, Sandra. We have the 5th largest economy in the world. We have the language that dominates world business. We are a great country if we want to be, Sandra.
Yeah. Who are we? Who are us?
The collective British people and their will. And, you know, Sandra, you may not believe in the country. There's plenty of people that do.
I do. You couldn't meet a more patriotic person than I am, Nigel.
So do you want us to be an independent, self-governing, democratic nation that makes its own decisions, including foreign policy?
I don't trust who govern us. I don't trust our parliament. Do you?
Well, we can get rid of them and replace them with somebody else.
Who? Be realistic.
Well, I don't know. It may be somebody whose name you've never even heard of. Do you know, if I'd said to you, Sandra, 4 years ago, Donald Trump would be the next US president, Brexit would happen, and Leicester City would win the Premier League, you'd have laughed at me. So I can't predict exactly what the future is, Sandra. Sandra, keep the faith. I'm going to move on to try and get one last caller in on this subject. I'm going to go to Alan in Fleet. Good evening, Alan.
Good evening, Nigel. I'm slightly confused. You're talking about we should be doing all we can to depose a oil-rich totalitarian state which treats its people badly, abuses human rights. You're talking about Saudi Arabia.
And spreads...
We're friends with Saudi Arabia.
Well, no, I mean, Alan, I have been very critical of much of the Wahhabist element that the Saudis have supported over the years. Trump's first foreign visit was to Saudi Arabia, Alan, and he said to them, reform and change, and we can be friends and do business together. Now, I'm not saying it's...
The problem we've got, Saudi is the biggest sponsor, not state sponsor, it's the biggest sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East. The finance, the number of prescribed terrorist organisations, if you look at the list of 61 the Americans have, the vast bulk of those are Wahhabi-based, Saudi-backed. Saudis are backing them all the way. I
have been very unhappy with much of the extremism that Saudi Arabia has funded. There are, on the face of it, there are some reforms going on in Saudi Arabia at this moment in time, and of course there is this big divide between Shia and Sunni, and we know all of that. But on Iran, Alan, you know, do you think the deal that Obama and the 3 big EU countries that struck, do you think it was a good deal?
I think the point is we had a deal. You work with the deal you've got whilst trying to improve it. You don't just throw it away, because then all the bets are off. the Iranians could then say, well, you're not dealing with us, so we're not going to deal with you. But you've given them the opportunity to walk out with the moral high ground. Trump has given this regime he despises the moral upper hand because he's walked out on the deal.
I don't think he's done that, Alan. I think what he's done is to actually expose to people the truth about simply how badly Iran has behaved since that deal was struck, the extent to which Obama was desperate for a foreign policy win of some kind. And during the 8 years, this is just about all that he had. And maybe because of that, he was prepared to strike a very bad deal full of loopholes.
Possibly, but then it's got to be based on the experts who dealt with this deal on behalf of the... It wouldn't have been Obama himself, there would have been people advising him.
Well, it would have been the State Department, as it would have been the Foreign Office talking to our friends in Brussels here. Alan, I thank you. Listen, folks, we've lost our influence in the world. It's not a good thing. I believe it very strongly. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow at 7. At 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins, but up next, and continuing the conversation, it's Clive Bull.
Thank you very much indeed, Nigel. Yes, we'll have more on the